Okay, welcome back. So, how's your day been going? Probably pretty good without any teachers. Anyway, so in this class, I really talk with my hands a lot, don't I? In this class, what we're going to do is I will finish up going over the questions that we started yesterday. Okay. Then you'll get into group work. So you'll stop this video, get into groups, and you'll do learning goals about the church. So there's the learning goals up there on the board and on the website. Take a look at them, create some success criteria for those, and then I want you to evaluate yourself. Do you understand how to be successful in regards to those learning goals? Okay. Then once you're done that, click on the video again, start it up, and I will describe the final project. Okay. And then after the final project, there are some other things for you to work on, and I'll do a little bit of connecting. Okay. So that's our plan for today. And let's get started. Okay. So yesterday when we left off, we just finished answering the question how the church had gained power. And we talked about 4 different ways that they had gained power in society. And the first one was canon law, which basically means the church had its own separate law court or law system for their people. So they didn't really have to follow the rules everybody else had, right? So they had their own little clique and they were judging each other. So they had a lot of leeway. So they could do a lot of things that you and I, if we were back there, couldn't have done. Right? They were separate. They had their own power. They judged themselves. So you can imagine how much restrictions they had, right? And then we talked about the interdict, which basically meant that the church would prohibit any religious services in a certain area. And remember, this was a time when people were very religious. They were worried about their souls burning in hell. And if you missed out on a Sunday or you missed out on a wedding or a funeral even, you could be risking your soul. So people were more apt to listen to the church than risk this, right? Or if this was to occur, they would ask the church, what can we do to get you to do that? So that gave them a lot of power, right? That gave them a lot of power over people's souls, over their lives, right? And to take it a next step forward, if they had a personal fight with someone, they could just say that you are a heretic. And a heretic was a horrible thing. It basically meant that you weren't a religious person. You weren't human. You were a devil. And if you were, say, a higher up person and you had a control of an area, that basically meant that everybody in that area didn't have to listen to you anymore because you were this heretic. You were this person who didn't have any connection to God. You're evil. So that is what happened there, right? And the last one, so that's controlling the people there. The last one was showing how they got money. And they got money by having their own tax system called the tithe. So they could tax people, get the money, and the church did, and they got really, really rich. So they had all of this, like they had the law, they had the control over your souls, and now they had lots of money. So the church was very, very powerful at this time. Well, it still is, right? Now, what did the church, number 2, what did the church think of marriage? What was it like? What did they think? Now, for them, divorce was a sacred institution, which means that they believed that God determined that marriage was important. So you could not say, for example, get a divorce. That was impossible to get, right? For average people, adultery was horrible. That was punishable by death. So Marriage itself was a very sacred rite. And you can still see that today, especially in things like the Roman Catholic Church, where divorce is a no-no. That is out there. That goes against what God has said. Okay. Now, the answer to number 3, what did they do? And don't get me wrong, the church didn't do everything wrong. Here, they're showing that they did a lot of good, and even today. Okay. So, for example, social work. They started to care about people and started to go out and help people, especially the poor and the needy. Right? They would look after them. They'd bring them clothes, bring them food, those kind of things. Set up like housing where they could stay. And even today, that is something that the church continues to do. Right? And the big thing that the church did, and we see it today, it's even it's even reflected in our maps and how we see hospitals, is they would start to set up hospitals and look after the sick, right? Take in the sick and make sure that they get better, looked after. And you can see it today in the names of hospitals, right? Where they always have Saint whatever, or this is the hospital sign, right? So you can see the church, even though over here they're doing something bad, they did something good for society, right? They were looking after the people who needed it the most, the poor and the sick. Okay. Now, the next 2 things that we're going to talk about go against everything I just said about the church doing good. Okay. So the first one is lay investure. And lay investure was a very interesting concept. Basically, what lay investure meant is a noble or a king. What they could do is they could appoint their friend or family member to a high position in the church. So, say you're controlling, say, Paris, the city of Paris. You would appoint your younger brother to be the bishop of Paris. And this gives you and your family a lot of power, a lot of, how do you say, a lot of, well, you have you're the head of the state, that area. So you have all of that social power, but you also have the religious power. And remember, the religion also has a lot of money. So this lay investor would let a family basically control that area with no voice against it. There was no voice saying, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't murder that person. You shouldn't do that. Both the social power and the religious power were rested in one family. So there's a lot of potential problems there. And the second one was almost as bad, was called simony. And basically, simony was, if you were wealthy enough, so if you're a merchant and you're making lots of money, you could buy your religious position. So you could say, hey, that parish or that area has a lot of money in the church. If I became bishop, I could get that money. So you would buy that position from the church and make yourself even wealthier, right? Now, the problems with these 2 things, lay investure and simony, is, are these people religious? Do they actually care about people's souls or whatever? And the answer is no. They weren't religious, most of them. All of these people that were getting appointed only cared about making money or gaining power. So there was this very big corruption that occurred during this time in the church hierarchy. And we're going to see later on that's going to cause a lot of problems between the people and the church. And we'll see what happens there. Okay? Now, what we're going to do now is go into the Okay, let's see. I have to share, so I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, to the final project. Okay, that's really tiny. I think you need it a little bit bigger. There we go. There, you can follow along. You don't have to see my face. Lucky people. Okay, so the final assignment, again, as I have stated, is got a lot of choice. Okay, not only in the topic, but also how you present it. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so to begin with, you may pick one of the following events. So there's going to be a list below, and you get to choose one of the events there. Okay, and suggest an individual in that event. If you don't like any of the events and people, you may propose your own 19th or 20th century event and individual. Now, this is any date that starts with the 18 or 19. Okay, anything earlier is a no-no. Okay, so you need an 18th, so 1840 whatever, or 19th, right? Century event and an individual. Or if you don't like the individual in the event, you could suggest, I want to change that individual to this person. Okay. If you want to present your own idea, please see me. And it says the end of the week, but because I'm not there, please see me by the end of Tuesday. Okay. That will allow you, give you time to get it in on the 9th when you have to tell me what you're doing. Okay. Now, some of the possible topics and people that you could study is the unification of Germany. And you would look at it, this is the person that influenced it, Otto von Bismarck. Okay. You could look at the Russian Revolution and Vladimir Lenin. So remember, I'll do it in a second. Or trench warfare and take a look at General Ferdinand Foch. The Versailles Treaty and Woodrow Wilson, the Great Depression, looking at Franklin D. Roosevelt. Okay, modern art, Salvador Dali. Women's rights in the 1910s to 1920s would be Nellie McClung, and she's Canadian. So here's one maybe you want to change, right? You could maybe change the dates, those kind of things, right? The Cold War impact on American society. And here you would take a look at Senator Joseph McCarthy. Okay, the establishment of communist China, Chairman Mao. The fall of communism in Europe, okay, Gorbachev or Ronald Reagan, right? You make a choice there. Development of human rights, Nelson Mandela. Now, when you are choosing these, remember the focus is on the event. Okay, the event is going to be the important part. Okay, the person is just what does he do in that event? Okay, how does he impact it? So I don't need to know that Vladimir Lenin was born this year. That's not important here. Just what he did during the Russian Revolution. Okay, so it's not a focus on that person. It's a focus on that event. And then a little added sub one is his impact on that event. Okay. Another one is modern art with Salvador Dali. Remember, it's talking about modern art, not Dali. So this is the one that's really difficult because people always present it like it's Dali's presentation, and it's not. He's just a little part of modern art. Okay. So you have to be careful when you're doing that. Okay. So these are the things that are going to be marked for your project. So the bibliography and research questions, they need to be handed in via Google Classroom on January 12th. Okay. Research notes need to be completed by January 29th and given to me. Hard copy for the students that are in class. And if you're still online, you need to send photos. Okay. If you get these in earlier, I will mark them earlier and get them back to you. So that's up to you. Okay. The research project needs to be completed and handed in to me by February 22nd. Now, depending on what you choose, this can be handed in electronically versus by Google Classroom or physically, okay, using a hard copy. Okay. And as I mentioned, there is a lot of choice. So you can take a look. There is a lot of choice that you can do. Just like grade 11 history, you can make a video documentary. You could create a manga comic. You could create a Google site on the event. So just like our class site, you could have one that's featuring only that event. You could create a newscast that's reporting on the event and explaining what's going on. You could create a history textbook section based on your event, right? And you can look at our history text and find out how you would set that up, right? You could record an audio documentary with script, right? Write and tape a play. So if you want to actually do an action, be in there, get involved. There you go. You could design a museum display or an art gallery. That's a little bit harder because we need to find a room to put it in, but I've seen it done. So that is possible. You could create a series of tweets about the event as it unfolds. This is a little bit harder because, tweets are limited to a certain amount of thing, and you have to get a lot of detail in. So there would be a lot of tweets, but it might be an interesting thing for you to think about. If none of these things interest you, you can propose something to me, okay? And we can talk about it. But again, try to get this done by Tuesday, right? Because you have to declare it by Wednesday. Okay. How are you going to get marked? Okay. These are the expectations. Okay. So the knowledge is going to be broken up into two things: the knowledge of your event and the knowledge of your individual. Okay. So the event and the individual. So again, don't forget to do one of these things. This is the problem with this assignment. Many times people focus only on the event and don't mention an individual, or they only focus on the individual and don't mention the event. The event is important, okay? The individual's impact is a little bit important. So make sure you hit both of them, okay? Your thinking is talking about your research notes, okay? Did you follow the expectations that I have set out for research notes? Okay. Do you have enough research notes? Do you have enough information in those research notes? Okay. The second part of the thinking is, were you able to connect the event and individual to the world today? So what was that? What was the impact of that event on the world today? All of those things that you're choosing from have impacted today. Can you tell me what it is? Okay. Communication, depending on what you choose, could be oral communication or it could be written communication. So again, that's going to change depending on your choice. Okay. Your application is going to be put together with three different things. Okay. Were you able to make a good bibliography? And in this case, it's MLA 8. Would you develop good research questions to guide your research? Were you able to develop an excellent project? And you guys are going to meet. So if certain number of people decide this is a textbook, you're going to meet together and decide what are the expectations, what are the different levels that Mr. Fleming's going to be looking at for this. Okay. Whew. So much to talk about. Okay. Then here's basically a checklist. Go through it, and as you're working on it, you can make sure you complete all of these things. Okay? So please read through that carefully. That's a checklist of you to understand exactly what you'll be doing. Now, there's a lot of different due dates. Okay. So January 9th, so that's next Wednesday, you need to declare your final project by answering the Google Classroom assignment. Okay. It's just basic things like what's your name, what's the topic, how do you want to present it, right? So you need to do that by the 9th. On the 15th, we're going to meet in groups of similar projects. So I will know what project you're in. I'll be putting you in those groups, and you'll have to develop the application criteria. Okay. Then bring it up and discuss it with me. And I'll have to say, is it good, acceptable, or not? Okay. January 12th, the bibliography and research questions need to be sent. Okay. The 29th, research notes need to be in. And February 22nd, at the end of the period, not 12 o'clock, because some of these projects will need to be handed in physically. So everybody needs the same due date and time. So on February 22nd, at the end of class time, you give me everything that you've finished. Okay? You give me your completed final project. Okay? Is there any questions about that? You can email them to me, you can chat with me, or you can wait till hopefully I show up tomorrow. Okay? Hopefully that is going to be what's going on. Okay? And that is our final. And I say okay a lot. Now, we now understand how society was at the start of the time period that we're studying, right? We understand that the political thing was feudalism, right? We understand that. And we understand that feudalism was basically a very localized government where one person had control over a very, very small area. And everybody was dependent on him for land, for protection, everything, right? And so he lorded it over everybody, right? We understand the economic system, manorialism, which basically meant self-sufficient, right? In that little area, you did everything for yourself. There was very little trade, right? Totally self-sufficient. So we should understand that in that area, many people didn't leave that area. They were scared of outsiders. So it was very, very inside, right? We should also understand that at that time, one of the major power brokers was the church. The church had a lot of power, and we could see that they tended to abuse it a little bit, right? So that's the world that we started out with. And now we're going to see how it started to change. Like in history, we tend to call that this age the Dark Ages. We're slowly changing our minds about that, but it was called the Dark Ages because there was very little history recorded. So reading seemed to disappear. It seemed to be a specialty only of the church. And we don't get a lot of information from that time. So that's why we call it the Dark Ages. And what we're getting into next is that change. And we're going to get into something called the Renaissance or the rebirth. And we're going to see that society is going to slowly change, and it's going to change into the world we live in today. Okay? So now what I'd like you to do is on the website, there is a series of questions about what is a fulfilling life. So get together and talk about what do you think is a fulfilling life. Now, and then I want you to think about, could you have a fulfilling life in that world we just described, where feudalism was the political system, where manorialism was the economic system, where the church controlled and had a lot of power? Could you actually have a life that's fulfilling? Okay. And if your answer is no, think about what do you want to see changed in that world? Okay. What do you think should be changed in that world? Okay. Then read the Renaissance document. Okay. Get back into your groups and discuss what were the changes made. Okay. And I want you to record it. Okay. I want you to put down, okay, before this occurred, then after this occurred. Okay. So read the Renaissance document, answer the questions, discuss the answers, and do that before and after. Okay. Hopefully that gives you all the way to the end of the class. If it doesn't, I want you to take a look at the humanist picture, and I want you to discuss what you think humanist is. Okay, that should be good. Okay, hopefully tomorrow when I come back, either I can introduce humanist to you, or you can ask questions about it. Okay, so please get done to at least the end of the Renaissance document, the end of that group work section. Okay, again, if you have any questions, you can email me, you can Google chat me. Okay, have a great day, and I hopefully will be talking to you tomorrow. Adios.